on how to set up and configure various different options for in-person, mixed, virtual, and open-ended type timing scenarios. So we have a lot of different types of situations that we'll cover, and we're going to give you an overview and in-depth look at some of those tools and how to set them up. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to let Chris take over and get started with us. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Kevin Lai is going to be monitoring that and raising any questions that he thinks will be good for everyone to hear, and just answering any and all of those that he's able to.
All right. Well, I know this is a hot topic. We've talked about it a little bit here and there, or teased it, if you will. And some of you might have been on previous webinars where we went through it. But there have been some upgrades to the flexible start results, and so we'll go over those as well today. So we've put this up a million times. I just wanted to make sure you guys saw it one more, because 1,000,001 seems like an odd number. So today we're going to be, or in this talk, we're going to be focusing on the results scoring and RaceJoy. We'll touch on some of the others, but the main focus is going to be the scoring side. So some of you this might be completely obvious. For others, it might not be. Why is this topic important? So a lot of events are adjusting their strategies for open start finish lines and or becoming virtual events. And they're seeking ways to offer reduced contact. We talked about this in the last session. But also they're looking for increased social distancing. And I think no one would disagree that the largest crowds at any event are going to be at the start line and the finish line. And most of you would also agree that you're probably not going to have much of any type of finish line festivities, potentially even in 2020. But that's okay. Like, nobody's super disappointed in that part. You know, an award ceremony is not mandatory to make a race happen. However, a starting line is, and figuring out a way to make that happen is important. And it seems really easy, the race director, but managing that data effectively as a timer is another story. So, you know, asking those people to go home after they finish, they're with it. They're completely okay as long as they get to run. So, and you also want to have, you know, as many alternatives as possible to engage as many athletes as possible while staying flexible. And again, like we talked about in the last session, a lot of municipalities are looking for guidance. They don't necessarily have guidelines yet. And so, in our opinion, the RaceDay scoring timers are kind of leading, not just the industry, but leading the charge just in general, because of the tools that they have at their disposal. They can actually make these races happen in some semblance of normal racing. So there's, again, this is a slide from the last talk. We talked about 3 different types of events: the traditional, the hybrid, and the purely virtual. And I wanted to go through super briefly the purely virtual, the race anywhere option. So obviously we're going to push you towards using RaceJoy. And that's because, like, I know Steve's probably on here, and he's down in one of the hotspots in Fort Lauderdale / Miami, and they're not allowed to have more than, I think, 5 people or something like that. Whereas others of you might be in places that you can have 100 people. So if you're only allowed to have a handful of people, you're not really going to be putting on an event of any type. And so you have to go virtual. And RaceJoy's Race Anywhere option allows that athlete engagement and potentially allows you to spread out on a nationwide level in terms of reach. A lot of people doing challenge type things, they're seeing the same response. So the athlete's distance can be prescribed in advance, and they can submit results directly through RaceJoy. And James is going to actually cover some of this in today's 4 o'clock session, which is how to set up your phone to use RaceJoy as an athlete for tomorrow's RaceJoy Rocks 5K. So if you've used it as a timer, great. You also should probably know what it looks like as an athlete. So I would strongly encourage you to, it's a super short how-to, but he's going to go through at 4 o'clock how to set up RaceJoy as an athlete. So tomorrow you'll be using the RaceJoy Race Anywhere. And again, these are just some slides to show you like your actual results, being able to submit those, push those up to RunSignup. So the other side of this is the traditional and hybrid approach. And traditional, I've circled that because there are, in my opinion, still some traditional events that are beginning to happen. And I think that races that are engaging in corrals for starting procedures would fall into that traditional event, because whereas your 200-person event last year didn't necessarily need corrals, you know, your 20,000 person event did. And so it's not that different. Your hybrid event, on the other hand, you still have defined course routes, but your start finish times are large, and like it could be days or weeks. And so the courses might not be marked, and you're likely providing official time or official times, or you might just be doing virtual result submissions. So we're going to focus mainly on hybrid, because that's where those gap factors really come into play. So why does all of this matter? And why are we even talking about this? So normal timing, it's really, really hard to pull down participant data during the race while you still are assigning bib numbers, or while people are still registering. And people want results before, in today's race experience, people want results if they finish at 8 a.m. before other people even register to compete at 4 p.m. So RaceDay Scoring has a bidirectional sync with the RunSignup database. And this is super important because by using RaceDay Scoring, you're able to dynamically assign bibs through the check-in app. You can leave race registration open on RunSignup, simultaneously having people register, checking in, bibs being assigned. People can be starting and finishing and receiving all of their results live. There's really not any other solutions that allow for this. All the others, you have to stop every once in a while, pull data down, and so it becomes a burden. So it's super important for those of you that are using other systems, or maybe there are ways to do it with Race Director, and we're going to get to that. But if you want the full sync, I would consider starting to play with RaceDay Scoring, because as I mentioned previously, this is where RaceDay Scoring really stretches its legs. So I did mention corrals. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew where to set up corrals. So corrals are under RaceDay Tools, and you can go into Setup Corrals. I'm going to just go through this very briefly because I'm going to talk about corrals. I'm going to pass it over to Matt to talk about Race Director and RaceDay Scoring, and then we're actually going to go into RaceDay Scoring and click buttons and do things. So setting up corrals here, you can set corrals to specific events with participant caps for specific corrals. You can have set estimated finish times and both min and max. You can also set up corrals by date of registration or something like that. So it allows you to set up smaller corrals at different times. So in this, you're limiting corrals to the number on course. So at an 8 a.m. start, there's only 25 people. At a 9 a.m. start, there's only 25 people. and for any of you that were on the webinar that we did, I think it was a week or two ago, with Vacation Races, they were talking about using an FM transmitter to alert people in their cars that their start time was coming up. And so in terms of the starting line and social distancing, they were able to use that function and use our corrals to limit the number of people in the starting area. So some other corral settings are just requiring people to select a corral, asking people their estimated finish time and putting them in corrals. So it's there's a number of other settings as well, but again, I just wanted to show you where this was in case you haven't used it. And then from here, we're gonna go into flexible start results. And this is offered for official race timing through both RaceDay Scoring and Race Director. And one other thing to think about is when you're doing an actual race, especially a hybrid event, consider also turning on RaceJoy with the courses set up, not to accept results, but it's a great way to allow for athletes to know the course. I know personally, I've set it up for a couple of test events in my neighborhood, and people loved having RaceJoy so that they knew when to turn. It wasn't so much for anything else than knowing the course, because it might not be an out and back course on a specific, path anymore. It might be, on a golf course path or something like that, just so you're not blocking roads for hours and hours.
Another great thing about RaceJoy is to be able to use it as like an event app. You can communicate with runners if you need to give them information really easily. So I think it's a really useful tool for these types of events where you don't have the on-site race experience.
Exactly. So I'm going to pass over, I'm going to stop sharing, pass over to Matt Avery.
Cool. So while I'm getting set up here, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat now. And Kevin, if there are any you wanted to bring up to Crisp, he'll answer them.
I think Kevin got one that was about, yes, you can ask participants to choose a corral during registration. Someone pointed out in a webinar a few weeks back, actually, on that same point, to choose a time slot. And they suggested that friends and family select the same time slots. And another person said, well, what we did was we put age groups in each time slot, so it was more of a head-to-head race. So there's a lot of different ways that you can manage your event with those corrals, and you can get creative. I can see positives and negatives to each one. It'd be awesome if we were able to start 1,000 people at a time, but until that comes back, this is a super great alternative.
I think I got everything up and running. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Great. Any other questions you want to bring up, or are we free to move on?
I think we're free to move on.
Cool. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about what this is, what we're talking about, the flexible start results concept. So this is something that we kind of had to figure out on the fly as races started trying to happen again in this COVID environment. We saw a lot of timers trying to figure out how they could actually time a race that was happening. And one of the ideas was maybe we could have a system to open up a course all day or all weekend and say, you just come in, you pick up your bib, you go and you start, and then you come in and you finish, and you can do it at any point over the weekend. And so you'd have, however many people end up doing it, completing this course, this set course over the course of days, maybe. And there comes, a few issues from a scoring side of things. When you try and do this, there's, obviously you have to be able to control better which reads get selected for people. The common paradigms of picking the last, scene read for the start and the first scene read for the finish kind of get thrown out the door. So we had to get creative and figure out better ways of managing it and handling it. So Race Director did it, and Roger is on the call. He put together a really nice solution for this, and we kind of implemented a similar thing in RaceDay Scoring. And it's been working really well. So Crisp actually had a great example of doing this himself. And I'm not sure if you plan on talking about your race you put on in your neighborhood too much, but it was a really cool use case for how this technology works for a real race scenario. He had, the check-in and the sign up all, touch free basically. And people would be coming through his neighborhood, just running the race, starting whenever they want, finishing whenever they want. So I'm going to be showing you guys a little bit of how that's done. So let's get started. So the first off, this is all available in Race Director as well as RaceDay Scoring. In Race Director, Roger has put a really great guide together on the Race Director software Google group. If you are a Race Director timer, highly recommend checking this out if you're interested in learning how to set this up. It's a lot more in depth. I'm not going to go too far into the details here. But basically, the idea is you have to just say that there's a common start-finish line and you're allowing mixed times. And then when you have an instance of someone who has multiple potentially good reads, you have the option on the right here, you'll see it, to select which set of reads you'd rather use for them. So the issue comes into play when someone basically completes the course twice as far as the chip system understands. So they may have picked up their packet, walked across the start line, went to their car, then came back and walked across the start line again. Well, the system thinks that that was a finish time, but actually it should have been the second set of reads that they triggered that should have been that. So the way our systems work is that instead of looking for the last, scene start read in some a designated period, and then the first scene finish read in some other designated period, we instead say, give me the first set of times that meets the gap factor I've defined. So in this race, I say the minimum split essentially should be 4 minutes and 30 seconds. So I need to capture all the different sets of reads that are at least 4 minutes and 30 seconds apart from each other and pick the first set of those reads to use as my finish time. So obviously, if you set it to be 4 minutes and 30 seconds, you may get a bunch of times that potentially could be good, which is why it's usually best if you're able to, for a 5K, say, set that to 13 minutes or something more reasonable. This is just showing off how it would look if you were to put in 4 minutes and 30 seconds for a 5K. It'll give you a couple of different options for each person because maybe they crossed the start finish line area 4 or 6 or 8 times.
And on this specific example, it just happens to be the 1 mile event, which is so short.
So this is all supported as well in RaceDay Scoring, and like Chris had said, we think it does it a little bit better just because the syncing process in RaceDay Scoring is a lot easier to manage on RaceDay than Race Director. With Race Director, it does have an automatic results publishing system to RunSignup, but what it's missing is the automatic import of participant data. So what's really better about RaceDay Scoring is that the participant data is automatically getting imported as they are coming in to RunSignup and as bib numbers are changing at RunSignup and so on and so forth. So it's just that little bit step further in terms of making your job as a timer a little bit easier. We have some friends who've done races where they have gone out to the grocery store and left their timing hardware in one place, and they were scoring it from a remote location without actually doing anything because it was all just syncing and running in the background and publishing results, and he was just checking on RunSignup to see if the results were still coming through. So it's really, really pretty cool. So this is just showing off how things will work in RaceDay Scoring. So I'm gonna go a little bit more in depth after I show you these screenshots, but what's important to understand about the way that this works is that we have decided in RaceDay Scoring to require that you use a common start-finish location. So usually that means it's actually the same device that you're collecting reads on, and you're collecting both starts and finish reads. Now, because RaceDay Scoring is very flexible, we do allow you to link multiple readers to a single location. So if you actually have one reader in one area collecting starts and another reader in another area collecting finishes, you could actually assign both of those readers to one common start finish location, and it will consider all those reads equally. So it'll work regardless of how your setup is done. But what's important to understand in RaceDay Scoring is to set up your timing location as a common start finish area. The reason for that is because you have to set the time filters to accept reads so that they're overlapping. So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna collect start times until midnight today, and I'm gonna start collecting finish times at 1 a.m. today. So basically it's gonna be all day collecting reads or all weekend or whatever you want. So what's nice about RaceDay Scoring again is that the system works on a date level, so you can set it up very easily from Friday morning until Monday afternoon if you wanted to. So I'm going to come back to this specific screen because this is showing off something that is important to talk about later. So here is the setup for a common start finish location in RaceDay Scoring. At the top, you see I have said that this is collecting start and finish times. In this example, I only had one stream, one reader from race result. I could have had multiples here. I could have had a start reader in a different location from the finish reader, and I've plugged them both into this location here in RaceDay Scoring. Below that, I have some very important settings to decide when to stop collecting start times and when to start collecting finish or split times. So for this race, you'll see that I'm stopping the collection of read times on the 3rd at 12 p.m. And I'm starting on the 2nd at 6:59 a.m. So that means that I have an open start finish time where I'm collecting reads for both. And when I come down here and say I'm expecting 2 occurrences, that means that I'm expecting a start and a finish for each person crossing this start-finish area. And then I have a gap factor, the minimum time accepted between reads. So if I'm doing a 5K, I may set that to 14 minutes. So what's important that I was going to mention before on the last screen is that Crisp in this example has done a really good job. And the reason I say that is because he's set up a 1 mile start finish location, a 5K start finish location, a 5 mile start finish location, and a 10K start finish location. So if you have all of these different events running over the same area, it's actually a best practice to create multiple locations, especially if they're different distances. The reason that that is important is because this gap factor is set on the location level. So I'm going to use this location for the 5K. So I'm going to want a gap factor that's like 14 minutes for the 5K. But if I were to look at the 1 mile, well, we'd actually want that 4:30 gap factor, right? So what this allows you to do is it allows you to designate a gap factor that's different for each event you have. So my 10K, my 5 mile, my 5K, my 1 mile are all going to have distinct gap factors. So even though most of the time in RaceDay Scoring, a location is like a physical location on the ground, we're kind of bending the rules of how you set this up to make it work really well for this open-ended timing scenario. So your 1 milers, I'm going to look for the first set of reads that's at least 4.5 minutes away from each other. The 5K, I'm going to select the first set of reads that is at least 14 minutes, and so on and so forth. So this is a really great example of how you would use RaceDay Scoring to configure an open-ended race. So on this next page, you can see this is the scored events. This is where I'm saying the 5K, the 5 mile, the 10K, and so on and so forth. And we'll see on the right here, I have the timing locations defined for the 5K as the start finish 5K. for both the start and the finish. Similarly, I have for the 5 mile, start, finish, 5 mile. And that basically ensures that anybody who's registered for the 5K event is going to use this 5K gap factor that I defined. So it's going to make sure that as people are out and running across the common start finish area, it knows what event they're registered for and applies the proper gap factor so we select the most accurate read for them. Now, with all that said, it's about the best we can do to make sure we get our best guess as to the most accurate time for everyone. However, there are still situations, like I said before, where people will wind up with multiple potentially good reads. So we've added some really nice features in RaceDay Scoring to allow you to select which of those reads you want to use. So we call it ambiguous times in RaceDay Scoring. So if you look at the raw reads view in RaceDay Scoring, you'll now see in the most recent update, if you are using a common start finish location, it will show this button called ambiguous times. And it says some participants may have multiple sets of valid start finish reads. You can select which set to use for those participants here. So this gives me the power, instead of forcing me to look for a participant, look at all their times, and then delete the raw data that I want to ignore. This allows me to just show the reads that we have potentially selected and pick the one that I want to use or the one I prefer. So on this next screen, we'll see our new little page that shows all the participants who have potentially multiple reads, their bib numbers, their scored events, the net times that were calculated from the set of reads that were selected based on the gap factor. So Joanna, she had 2 reads, or 2 sets of reads, I should say, that were selected here, or potentially selected. And it decided to use this one, the 54 minutes and 55 seconds for a 5 mile. Now you can basically come in and override it and say, I actually did want to use this one. And it will allow you to manually change which read to use for that person. So what's really nice about this, again, it lets you look at the person's name. It allows you to see what event they are registered for and override which read it should be using. So again, it always picks the first set of potentially valid reads. So like for this person, Kevin, they're doing the 5K, 29 minutes is over 14 minutes, but so is an hour and 53 minutes. So the first one we saw was this one, and we used that first. So I can come in here and override it by picking the other one, and it'll recalculate their times. So this is really powerful and will help a ton with any races doing this open-ended timing scenario. So I'm gonna jump into RaceDay Scoring and kind of
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that both Race Director and RaceDay Scoring are only showing you participants that have problems. So you might have 500 people, and if only 6 have 2 pairs of reads that meet the rules, it's only those 12 reads that you would see in this grid here.
Yeah, so at the top it does say these participants have multiple sets of reads that meet the gap factor. Select which one to use. So this is a filtered list. It doesn't show you absolutely everything. It just shows you the set of participants who happen to have multiple potential reads. So I'm going to jump in to RaceDay Scoring a little bit. I'm sure we had some questions. Let me jump in before we take questions. I think I'll cover some things as I go through these.
Kind of quiet on the question front right now.
Nice. That means I'm doing a good job, right?
You're doing an amazing job.
All right, so here is that race in RaceDay Scoring. I think I have an older version, Chris, where you didn't set up the gap factors for each event here, but I'll still be able to show it off pretty well. So what's important, let me make sure I have my notes right here. Yeah, so what's important first off is, again, that timing location configuration. So in RaceDay Scoring.
You're still sharing the.
Oh, hi. Sorry.
You're good.
stop sharing.
And while you're doing that, Gabe asked if he can't imagine leaving a timing system sitting out with no one watching it. What we actually had, some people were using side antennas and setting it up near a glass door and with either spray chalk or tape and a sign alongside of it, and the person would actually get really close to the glass door where the instructions were, and it would read them at that side antenna.
That's a really good idea. Can you see my screen now, Chris?
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, I think I was just sharing that window. So in RaceDay Scoring, there's a bunch of different things on the side here. The one that's important is this timing locations one. So in here, I just have, like I said, just a single common start finish. In Crisp's example, he had updated this race to have multiple ones so we could have separate gap factors for each distance. If you click into settings, we'll be able to adjust time filters, which is what I want to do now. So here, I have this date range where I'm stopping the start times at 11:59 and I'm starting finish times at 7 a.m. So it's an overlapping kind of situation. And I have that gap factor set up right here. So again, you can have multiple streams. So if I had more than one, I could assign them here. Again, in this scored event part, I can decide which locations to use for each scored event. If I had set up multiple locations for each, or one location for each event, I could assign those here. So if you are on the race dashboard, there's this View All Raw Reads button. If you're a RaceDay Scoring user, I hope you're comfortable with this and understand that it's there and how it can help you, because it's one of the most important pieces of the software. It lets you view all of the reads and whether or not they were used or not. And if they were not used, they tell you why they weren't used. And you can filter and say, I want to show me all the reads that were filtered by time, or show me all the ones that were ignored because there was a better read selected, or show me all the ones for bib 1090. And it really lets you dive into the details and troubleshoot your races. So if you're seeing something get selected that you don't want, or you're wondering why it picked a time over another, it'll try to be as descriptive as possible and give you a hint as to why it picked a read. So you see in this race, I do have this ambiguous times button. It means again that I have multiple sets of valid start-finish reads for some people. And in here, I would be able to go in and say, okay, Kevin, they had an hour and 53 minutes and a 29-minute one. And he's pissed off because he's like, my Garmin says it was a 29 minutes, but it was inaccurate. So I can come in here and now just say, I'm going to select that time for that person. And it's really nice because you can verify everything. You can see the date and the time for the passing of the start and the finish. And I can come in and verify, Kevin, it now updated his time to be 29 minutes right away. So no need to recalculate or anything, just does it for you automatically. So it's really, really slick the way we've done this. The last thing I wanted to kind of show you in RaceDay Scoring was a feature that we added a little bit ago, but is not too well used. Let me see if I have. Yeah, so here's our 5K results. This may not be really accurate. I think oh no, yeah, the chip time is there. So there's a few things I could show. The first one being, if you go into scored events now, there's a new setting to exclude the clock times if you have chip time selected. So for open-ended timing, you generally will want to only show the chip times because the clock times are meaningless because it's 7 a.m., but there's no real gun time for this race. It's really each person has their own personal gun time, the time they cross the mat at the start. So I don't want that clock time to show in any reports. So I'm going to check those boxes for each of these and save it. It should update my reports. I don't know if it actually does. I think it will. Oh, it did. Great. So it should now, in a second, once these reports are available to me, get rid of that clock time. And it may not because I had generated it on an older version. But that is a new feature that is available. So when you build races, it won't generate that chip field in the reports. Now, RaceDay Scoring is super flexible. So I can always go ahead and change what fields show in reports whenever I want to. What I did want to show you today was we've added the ability to show time of day as a field in reports in RaceDay Scoring. So this 5K overall, this is nice that it shows their chip times here, but a lot of times you like to show the actual time of day that they start and finished for verification purposes and so that the participants can see that information themselves. So if you go into a report in RaceDay Scoring under the report section, if you click actions next to a report tile and edit, you'll be brought into the report builder. The report builder allows you to customize all the different report sections within a report, edit columns within that section, add columns within that section, and filter them. So for this report, I don't want clock time, so I just check that box, it gets rid of it. Now I may or may not want other fields. I may want to reorganize them and move them around and things like that. I can certainly do that by just dragging and dropping these. What I want to do though is show you the new time of day fields we have. So if you go to the add columns panel, you can just click in here and type in time of day. And we'll see we have all of these new options. We have splits, entire race start, entire race finish for all these. So basically, for all of the segments you have in your race, this race is a single segment just to start and finish. If I had a triathlon, it would show for all of the splits as well. I could show the time of day for the start or finish of any of the segments in my race. So it's really powerful. For today, I just really want to show entire race start, time of day. Oh, sorry, date, time of day. That shows me both the date and the time of day. If I wanted to, I could just show the time of day itself, but I want to show the date. So entire race start time of day. Now it puts them on here, and I have, oops, sorry, finish is what I meant. So it puts them on here, and it has a pretty lengthy title. So I'm going to edit that. This box won't update, but the report will. So entire race, finish time of day, isn't that great? So I'm just going to say finish time TOD. How about, that's a lot easier to look at. And then we'll do for the start TOD. And let's say the start will go here. The finish will go here, there. And that should look better. So now let's take a look at that report. Cool. I put the wrong, I didn't put the date one in for the finish, my bad. But what it does do is it'll show the date and the time for each read that was selected, as well as the chip time. So it's really flexible in RaceDay Scoring, and all of this information works very nicely with the RunSignup results integration. So you can just set up a autosave to RunSignup, and on race day, you can just quickly go in and start publishing results for it. And I'm not going to do that because this is actually a race that Chris timed. I don't want to start publishing bad results to it. I don't think he'd like me very much because he'd probably start getting questions and emails from his neighbors. So that's what I wanted to show you guys on the RaceDay Scoring side of things in the app itself. So before we move on, do we want to take some questions?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. One is, when you change results on the report columns in RaceDay Scoring, will it automatically change them at the RunSignup on the web page?
Yeah, it should do that.
And then let's see, why would you need time of day?
Some people like to see time of day to verify that they were correct. It's just we had a few customers request that. So I'm not sure. I think it's just they like to see the actual time of day for the start finish when you have it over multiple days.
Let's see. Does RaceDay Scoring pull in the corral start time assignments from RunSignup?
So the corrals, the way corrals work with RunSignup is that we do support importing corrals into RaceDay Scoring. If this race had corrals, it would pull them down and it would pull down the association between the participants and the corrals they were assigned to. So it would say Joanna was in corral whatever. Now, what's important to understand about the way that corrals work on RunSignup is that the time field in RunSignup isn't an actual time field. It's like a string. It's just you could call the time field 5 minutes after the cannon goes off or whatever. So it's not an actual time field. So we're not able to automatically set a start time based on that field. So you can come in, if you had all these corrals set up on RunSignup, they'd be assigned for you automatically. You could just type in the start time for each corral. And if you had these corrals, let's just say I had test and test 2. If I had these corrals set up, when I go into set start times in RaceDay Scoring, I could say I want to start corral test right now. And I could say I want to start test 2 now. And it will show, you know, those running clocks if we're on the same day as the race. Any other questions before we moved on?
Matt, do you have a test race that you could possibly show the autosave and how that looks going from RaceDay Scoring to RunSignup?
Let me see. I don't know if I do. Let's see if this will work. So I'm not positive if this does work, so I apologize. This is just an old race I had on here, so we'll see if it does. But looks like I had some autosaves already running for this race. So it may not be the best example, but you'll see here that I have a button that says autosave settings. If I hadn't already set this up, it would just say autosaves. And basically I come into here and I could add a autosave to RunSignup. So this race already has it set up and it's publishing every second to this result set on RunSignup. And there's a few other things like, you know, the pace I'm showing, questions, contact, all this stuff. So basically, if I have already added that, it will show that I have some report autosaves running on the dashboard here. So it says that it last ran at this time or that time for these 2 different reports. So if I have these autosaves running, results are just publishing throughout the day. I can pause them, I can resume them, and so on and so forth. On the reports page, we do give you some handy links. So you'll see this live results link appear if you have an autosave on this report. So you can click view results, view leaderboard, view recent finishers. These are RunSignup results URLs that are just generated for you. So if you click view results, lets you check on the results for this specific event. So I only had 1 in here. Maybe I have some others in the other one. Yeah. So it shows me the results there. I also have things like recent finishers, which is just a leaderboard type of thing, which shows me the most recent finishers. So in this case, the last finishers of the 5K, or a leaderboard, which shows me, you know, the top however many finishers. With RunSignup leaderboards, you can configure these to have big font if you want to show it on a large screen, not show times or whatever you want to. You can refresh it at a different rate. You can do a scroll rate. So it auto pages every X seconds. So these are really handy to be able to throw up results on a big screen really quickly. All you got to do is find the report you're publishing, find the live results links, view recent finishers, and email this link to yourself. Does that answer the questions?
One more, Matt. When results get texted to runners, if you make any changes, do the results get retexted out?
No. What you should do actually when you're configuring text, and I think the default now does this, I can't quite remember. We actually include a link to the live results for that person. So that's important because if you were to include, let's say, the time of their finish or their finish placement at the time that they actually cross the line, it might get updated, and it certainly will get updated for open-ended timing. So I never recommend putting a static value in a text message. I would never, ever put their placement in a text message because for open-ended timing, the first person who does the race could be the slowest person who does the race in this situation. So what you really want to do is include their results URL link, which is this, because this is a live and always up-to-date link. So if they're on their phone, chances are they have a web browser on their phone. So it will allow them to view the most accurate and up-to-date result for themselves. So always recommend using this individual result URL instead of any static times, because like we said, it can change, and you know how it works as a timer. Someone's time gets updated and they're unhappy because it did.
We have another question about an issue with two divisions showing on the results page and preventing that in regards to two different divisions. And so if you have like a youth division and an adult division, you can put both underneath the same scored event if you're scoring just by age group there. And they'll all filter in the same result set.
So Matt, if you go back to the RunSignup results page you just had up.
Yeah.
And go back one. So on the right, like I will sometimes get where the division place, like for the same person, like it's weird. It'll be, one will be right, but then, it'll be like, they'll be in a female division as well. And I noticed that with those two up top there. And so I don't know if that is intentional or.
With this race, I don't know exactly if I had set it up to be, these are potentially legitimate because I may have allowed double dipping for the
Okay, I see.
top finisher categories at the time I posted them. But this is a potentially valid thing. Like this person is between the ages of 19 and 1, and he's also over the age of 0, so he qualified for the overall band. And I could have said that they're not removed from their age groups.
Okay.
So if you do see something weird with that, shoot us a note with a race to send us.
I will.
Because if it's like showing them in the male and female divisions, that's a problem.
It might be weird. Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Yeah. We do have a couple more slides to get through. Are there more questions before we move on?
See, Will is asking, can who gets awards be displayed on the web? And yes, that you can set that up.
Yeah, if you set these number of winners on the age groups in RaceDay Scoring, it actually controls on RunSignup at the very bottom of the results page these. So there's these bands at the bottom. There's 3 deep, and that's what actually that field is controlling. Right here, it shows 3 per.
And I think that is all the questions currently on there.
Awesome. So I'm going to finish out this presentation. I think I've spent enough time on RaceDay Scoring. We're getting actually pretty close to wrapping up. That's great. So one last thing on the results for RunSignup. If you didn't change the way that the order is displayed in RaceDay Scoring, you can always change the way that the order is displayed on the RunSignup results themselves. This is just a little known feature, or we find people who don't know it exists every once in a while, so I wanted to bring it up. There's a little edit icon on the result set, which allows you to hide or rename or reorder any result columns on the result page. Just super handy if you don't know it exists.
And that's available for timers and race directors. So if you have timer level access to the event, you have those for any of your events, regardless of regardless how the results were put in there.
It's also important to understand that you only see that edit box if you have that level of access. So if you open this in an incognito window, you wouldn't see that edit access, obviously. People can't come in and just change the view for everybody else.
And the question popped up, do those result edits gets messed up when more results start to flow in? And know that your edits hold. And your edits here we're talking about are just like moving columns, changing headers, things like that.
Just display. It's not actually removing any content. All right, moving on. Some timer symposium sessions that are upcoming that we think you'd be interested in. So Thursday, tomorrow, I guess. What day is it? I don't know. At 1:30, there's a modified in-person event. Attend this timer panel session to hear from industry timers and their approach to providing in-person events during the pandemic. So this is really cool because we've gotten some good examples of events that were able to be put on during COVID-19. And you'll see on the left a little picture of a packet pickup demonstration for a race that was practicing social distancing. Another one, Thursday, June 24th from 2 to 3 p.m. EST. Benefits of RunSignup for races. So this is a session for timers specifically who want to learn more about the RunSignup features that we don't usually cover in timer-oriented sessions. So things like referral rewards and all the cool whiz-bangy marketing features that RunSignup has that Crisp and I don't know as much about than the RunSignup account managers who are going to be giving this demonstration on. So highly recommend going to that session. You'll learn a lot about RunSignup and the cool tools that they have. We've been talking about this all week, I know. Come out and do a virtual 5K tomorrow. It's gonna be fun. You'll learn a lot. You'll be able to see RaceJoy in action as if you're running the race. You can better communicate to participants how it works, and if they have questions, hopefully you'll be able to answer them. Some upcoming training sessions. We do a lot of one-on-one training with RaceDay Scoring. We had a beginner certification class on Monday, which is something that we do frequently throughout the year now. And we want to keep that pretty basic because we find that a lot of people need basic training in RaceDay Scoring. So for the advanced type of training, we tried to do group sessions for that, but it's very difficult. Because everybody is so unique and the software is so flexible, we find it's easier to just do one-on-one training sessions with people who have a very specific type of race example they're trying to time, or especially when an organization is moving over to RaceDay Scoring and they're not sure how to configure all of their devices and connect them to RaceDay Scoring. So we have a bunch of staff that's very well trained in basically providing to you custom solutions for your timing organization. And we like those personal one-on-one communications because we think we build up a better repertoire with our customer base, you guys, doing one-on-ones than it does in a group session. So Chris handles this and manages them. He does do a lot of the one-on-ones himself, most all of them. If there's anything that he doesn't understand or wants assistance with, I come in and help, or Kevin comes in and helps, or Roger comes in and helps. So basically, Chris is the guy to go to, and he kind of coordinates the training sessions for RaceDay Scoring. So the next RaceJoy certification training will be Tuesday, July 28th at 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. So we're going to continue to do these RaceJoy certifications, especially around the virtual side of things, because we're seeing so much use out of it lately. This is just an overview slide for RaceDay Suite license. If you don't know about it, the idea is that the suite includes Race Director, RaceDay Scoring, all of the cool RunSignup RaceDay features, as well as the RaceJoy special pricing arrangement for RaceDay certified timers. So it's one-time yearly fee, and you get free access to RaceJoy to be able to pay to sell to your events. So it's really, really cool. But it's important to understand that you do need to purchase the suite license in order to have access to that. All right, and that's just about perfect on time for a few more quick questions if there are any.
seem to be good on the question side right now. If anyone has any last minute questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Yeah.
And for those of you, again, that have not used RaceJoy and do want to use it tomorrow, James is going to be doing a walkthrough on setup for your device. Again, this is more as an athlete, less as a timer or race director. But if you've not used it, it is really encouraged that you sit in on that 4 o'clock call so you know how to set your own phone up.
One last question just came in. If you already have people registered, can you ask for an estimated finish time to assign corrals?
Yeah. So what you can do is you can still ask that question, and you can allow for participant management tools, and allow for people to change their response up until whatever day or time you want that shut down. And then you can send an email out to all present registrations requesting that they go into their registration and updating that. Granted, you're not going to have, you're not going to have 100% success rate, but you will get a number of them to do it.
Just one last question that I saw. They're just wondering if these sessions are going to be recorded and posted. So everything is going to be recorded and published after Symposium, besides the group conversations that we have. So the one's just about like a roundtable discussion. So this session and all the other timer sessions will be recorded and posted after the fact. All right, well, I think that's everything. Thank you so much for coming and attending and for all the great questions. I hope the best for you and your company as we figure out how to make races happen in the future. So we'll talk to you in the next one.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.